Good day and welcome back to Elementary 72 Gaming. Before I get into this video, I'd like to ask you all to please leave a like or comment on my video, consider subscribing to my channel, and if you dislike the content, please leave a comment. Now, today I'm going to be going over something a little bit different from my normal content. I'm going to be touching on vessels that I don't use, and this is just similar to my theory builds. This is something you can do as uh, a regular pilot. If you decide that all of a sudden you're tired of taking on the heavy burden of using cruisers or battle cruisers, and you decide you want to downgrade a bit because you've got a faction frigate blueprint, this is just going to be specially made for you. Now, I'm not going to be discussing them in particular, but I'm just going to go into a quick deployment strategy, should I say. So basically, this is what's happening. You're playing the game, you've been running around in a cruiser, you've been uh, farming around in Nullsec, and all of a sudden, 1 week, let's say you're really rich in terms of gameplay, you've got a couple of billion set aside, you're like 3 or 4 billion up, and in 1 week, you end up losing 4 or 5 battle cruisers, you end up getting gate camped non-stop with your cruiser. Now, as I'm saying, this is for a rich player, which I'm talking about, and you really get tired of it. You want something that isn't going to get stuck in the gates and something that they can't jam. So, what are you going to do? You're going to drop down to these frigates. Now, one thing to note about these special frigates from the missions, you can purchase their blueprints on the market. There are some available for purchase, and you can actually purchase the vessels from members inside your fleet. So basically, if you have the blueprint, you can transfer it over to somebody else who's in industry, and you can have them produce it for you, or you can just transfer over SP on your own and redo it. Now, that's the whole thing that you could do, but I'm just going to go with the standard from the point after you're ready to use the ship. Now, I'm not going to go over where you're going to transfer skills to, how you're going to transfer skills to and from, so you get the best possible deal on your ship, so that it isn't too expensive, so that you're knocking down the price. And these ships aren't really so expensive when it comes to purchasing them from your allies. A 1.5 million ship, you might pay 1.7 million, 1.8 million if your corp is nice and friendly with the amount of charging that they're doing. So that's about it on these frigates. No, sorry, not 1 point. About whatever the price is, just add 100 million or 200 million on top of it. It is worth it to pay the little bit extra. It's worth it for them because they have to wait for it to come off the manufacturing line. Even though the manufacturing line will have more than one slot, they can make quite a bit of them by selling the vessels themselves, and that's how they're making their profit at the end of the day. That's how the industry corps are going to get rich as well. So you've been having a tough time, and you're now at the point where you need to get a frigate because you're tired of getting warp disrupted every time you try to run away. First thing you're going to do is open up the frigates and look at which frigate you want to take. Now, this is totally new to me. I haven't touched them before. It's just something that someone told me. Their frigate never ever gets stuck. They take 0.6 seconds to move from any gate. That's faster than any ship can lock on you. So 0.6 seconds gate to gate while they're online, it means they're never going to get gate camped. And the only time you will be able to gate camp them is with the bubble in the interdiction spheres basically coming up in the next month. And then the other problem is trying to catch the ship because of how fast it is. It's going to get out of your web of fire range in a matter of seconds, and the only thing that can chase it is another frigate. And by the time the frigate has locked on, it already got range, and it's just going to be a long cat and mouse fight for 60 seconds, and they're going to be heading towards the edge of that sphere non-stop throughout that entire fight. So quick run and getting out of it, and then they're going to re-engage autopilot and be away. So what are you going to need to think about for this entire uh, build? Right, let's see which vessels there are to choose and what's their speeds. Now I'm going to go through all with just the basics. I'm not going to open out anything in particular. Flight velocity 354 meters per second. Drones and missiles, okay, that's what I've got with it. Let's look at the next one, the Dremia. 50% warp speed, yep, this is something I'm going to think of. Control activation, yeah, something worth it. 477 meters per second. So right now Dremiel is sitting above Worm if I want to just get away and use it for quick fights. Okay, let's look at this. I'm getting mid-slot advantages, stasis web of fire, laser advantages, laser tracking speed, 378 meters per second, not the ship for me. Let's go to the Astro. Covert ops cloaking, yeah, that's something I could use. Scan strength, drone DPS, 330 meters per second. No, I'm still sitting with the Dremio. Let's go. Okay, looking at everything here. This one has warp scrambler strength, something to think about, but it's not really what you're going for. 417 meters per second is the second fastest, so not really where I'm going with it. Let's go Succubus. Succubus is a very powerful, very fast one, and it has a shield field module. Now, I did learn what shield field modules are. I'll explain it in another video. 414 meters per second, still second to the Dremiel. And if I am correct, I'm going to go right down to the Daredevil just to double check against that. Yeah, nothing here in terms of beating its speed. So the Dremiel is the fastest. So if I wanted to be untouchable by warp disruptors, I'm going to jump in a Dremiel. And what am I going to do first thing when I get a Dremiel? I'm going to reallocate skills. So which skills would you reallocate, technically speaking, to become immune to gate camps? Okay, so first thing is going to be your cruiser technology. You're going to master frigate command. Okay, you can see I've got frigate command on the first one. That gives me plus 25% velocity, minus 25% inertia. Then I'm going to go advanced, and it's going to increase me by 10%. Then I'm going to go expert, and that's going to increase it again by another 10%. And overall, this increases that velocity by 45%. So 45% extra velocity on the ship at 477 meters per second. So that's a nice large addition to that speed. Let me just work it out. So 477 plus 25%. That's going to give about 596 meters per second. So 596 meters per second. If I want to increase the speed, I can increase the speed, but I'm not going to go at that just yet. Before I go and touch anything further, I'm not going to run an afterburner on the ship. I'm actually going to run a micro warp drive. Now the reason for this is it's a small micro warp drive, and they are amongst the most efficient when it comes to running on the ships. They really don't impact the ship too heavy, and it's going to help you get away very quickly from any type of trap. And that's all you need, speed. So there's it. It's going to reduce your capacitor need, activation time. Okay, so all of this is just going to reduce the amount of energy you're driving out. So micro warp drive is where you're going to focus your energy. This is just basically your getaway ship, so that you can keep jumping through gates without getting caught. Basically, if you're running in between a nullsec and you have an enemy between you. This is purely for that purpose. This build won't help you if you're thinking of fighting an enemy for territory. Right, so that's what you can do with it. It's also good for scouting areas and using it in that manner. So let's move on to your maintenance technology. Are you going to need any maintenance technology for this? Well, obviously you have changed your ship style, so you're going to go into defense. You're going to upgrade your frigate defense as standard. The first one only gives you a direct figure, then 25% and 12.5. So only 37.5% to the total. I did make a mistake there. I was saying 15%, it's 12.5. Small mistake, big difference. So what this is going to do is make that ship a little bit more tanky. Now there is something else to do with the whole ship that you are going to use. Now if you change over to the Dremiel and you already have that type of ISK, you're going to buy the best fittings. So what fittings were you going to run on the Dremiel? But I'm not yet done with it. You still have to go through resetting your engineering on the ship, and then you're going to have to change your weapons over from medium to small. So let's go back to the Dremiel and see exactly where all of its benefits were. Sorry, I know I have the market open. Okay, so let's see where its benefit is. Warp speed, micro warp drive. Damage control, I'm not really worried about that at this moment. So now let's have a look at it, right? So we already know that we're going to get a nice big chunk of speed on the ship just from the upgrades taking it to expert. Then we can also upgrade the speed a little bit further by putting on a velocity thruster on the ship. So that's going to give you even faster movement speed with the vessel. And that's going to add a little percentage on. It's not that massive. And last but not least, you're adding on the micro warp drive. Now, with the micro warp drive, I'm suspecting the ship will break 3 to 4,000 meters per second. It's going to move that fast. So that's the amount of speed that you're going to have. So you can literally shoot out of an interdiction sphere if they do try to trap you like this, if they have just set up a straightforward gate camp. And you'll be able to get away quite easily. Micro warp drives aren't affected by it. If I am wrong, then I will update it when the interdiction spheres come out in the game. So it's going to give you a boost in speed for several seconds, and what that is going to allow you to do is run straight for the edge. Now you're going to burn through your capacitor quite quickly. It'll knock out 20% and you'll gain 10% in that time. So you can knock out your complete capacitor and lose power on the ship. Now let's look at what weapons it favors. It favors cannon weapons. So 3 slots of cannon weapons, the best C-type cannons for the small class, and that's all you're going to need on the ship really. And you're going to make sure that you keep your range as far as possible. You're going to try and keep out of the 25 not the 25, the 20 kilometer radius as much as possible. You're going to try and break it. So anything that will get you outside of 25 kilometers is what you're going to have on it. And I'm going to give you another reason for running the ship besides it being able to run through blockades very easily. Now moving on, you already saw that there is the first slot. The first slot in your weapons is all cannons. Your mid slot. Now, what are you going to put on the mid slot for this vessel? Now, this vessel is going to have 3 very special roles depending on where you're deploying it. You can either deploy it directly in combat for holding a gate camp. It will be quite helpful in that situation. All it's got to do is jam a vessel's warp, and there you go. You've got something worthwhile. Weber fires, not really much of a help to a small vessel, so you're going to have to change it up a little bit. You're going to have to get a better fitting for it. So let's see what we could put. What we could put in the slot. So for the small little vessel, you could run Norse to give it a little bit extra push when it comes to gaining power. You could give it a field. Wait, does this one have a field bonus? I don't think so. No field bonuses. So double warp disruptor and a stasis Weber fire, you can always help someone out in a fleet if you do fleet with them, but that's the only time you're going to use the mid slot on the ship. Other than that, you're not really going to use it, and I know that I did say double warp disruptor. Now, what are you going to use on the low slot? We already know there's the micro warp drive. Now, let's just have a basic look at its defense. It's standard for me to look at the defense to say which way we're going with the regeneration. Okay, so this would be a better armor tank than a shield tank. However, due to its speed, you're generally going to run speed tanking over anything else to keep it out of combat. So I already said that you're going to have the micro warp drive on it. You could double it up with a micro warp drive and afterburner. Not really going to be the best combo, but afterburner can work. And you could give it armor repair or shield repair. Doesn't make a difference. If you think it does make a difference, go for the shield repair or go for the armor repair and see how it goes. The reason why I'm saying it's not going to make a difference is this ship is so fast it shouldn't take any damage. And if you get caught in webs, that's because you're fighting too close and you didn't follow the tip on keeping your distance above 20 kilometers. Because at 20 kilometers, you can't be webbed by any vessels. If you're keeping a 25 kilometer radius, even if they activate a micro warp drive and grab you, you can activate your micro warp drive and get out of the firing range. And that's still going to be way too fast for them to lock onto you because you'll be moving at plus 3000. A micro warp drive reduced by 50% will only give you 1500 meters per second. And as I said, you could swap it out for an afterburner that will put you at just over 1800 meters per second, with the 181% boost, which is also going to be impacted with what I'm going to talk about in the low slots. Now, in terms of weapon rigs on this vessel, you're going to run cannon rigs. Increase your cannon damage, increase everything so that you have a nice powerful hit from the ship. In terms of defense, you don't have to really worry about it so much. If you're worrying about the defense of the ship, you're not running it fast enough. Frigates are that blitz on the map, basically. That's how you use them. So that's where you're going to go with all of your stuff. It's damage, range, and reduction on activation time. So the more frequently and the faster that you can fire, the better with the ship. Now the Dremel is only a frigate. That means if you're going to take on solo missions and solo hardcore, hard level encounters, it is going to take some time with it. But you can solo everything in the game with these entry level ships. Now you might be wondering, what am I talking about? It's so weak, it's not going to be able to. No, it actually is going to be able to, because the Dremel is really, really quick. You could solo for Patriotism, Mega Corporation, A Soldier's Way, and Bad Hair Day with this vessel. It's no problem because these small vessels do have the speed to not get hit. And if they warp disrupt you, it doesn't make a difference. They're not going to hit you. So you're not taking any damage. And you're so fast that you're outside of the tracking range of missiles as well. And there's your double win. And even if they hit you, they're hitting you for maximum reduction in damage, less than 1 or 2% of your shield at a go. So it's not really all that big damage. You're taking 10s and 20s, or you're taking 30s as your maximum damage. Now, adding all of that into account, what are the other things that you need to think about for this entire vessel's operation? Now, the last section where it comes to putting it in for your rigs. As I said, it's so fast it can't be camped at a gate camp. Now, that's because of one of the fittings that you're going to put on. That's the Polycarbon Engine. Now, it is a engineering fitting, and it is one of the things which make it super, super quick on that reaction time to leave a gate. It's going to warp so quickly that they won't even have a chance to see your signature pop up properly. You'll just be a blimp on the map and you'll be gone basically for them. That's how fast you're going to move. So Polycarbon Engine helps you reduce your inertia. Then the second thing you're going to do is put on the thruster fitting to give you better thrust. And last but not least, in the last slot of your ship, you are going to put on what is this rig? Sorry, it's from the power regulation. In the engineering power regulation, you're going to reduce your capacitor, and that's going to give you the chance to really, really move. Now, with all of these effects put into place for your frigate can move absolutely fast. It has a super fast turning radius. It has a quick acceleration. It has a higher top speed, and it can regain its capacitor a little bit faster. Now, if you're thinking a little bit faster isn't all that much, it only takes 242 seconds to completely recover its capacitor. At 6.6 gigajoules, with the bonus of your engineering, which is going to pull it up quite a bit, and the fact that the entire capacitor is going to be much larger, you're going to have the advantage of gaining capacitor faster. And with all of this gain added in, you're going to be at around the base stat for a cruiser. And you're going to be able to output the same damage as a base cruiser. So you're going to have that power from a cruiser basically in a small little dainty ship. Now this is where all of your advantages come. If you run it in PvP, make sure you don't break the distance limit that I said. Remember, do not go under 20 kilometers. Nothing can catch you at that rate. If anything is closing distance on you, make sure you activate your micro warp drive and keep your distance. That's the whole idea behind it, to make sure that nobody breaches your distance. And bigger ships can't run micro warp drives for as long as you can, because the larger micro warp drives are really, really heavy on power grids. So that's the whole thing about running it. So you now have your advantage and you can really boost and fight the longer fight. Sorry. So with all of this being said, what are the advantages with these small faction ships? And why did I say that you're just using your skill reallocations? Now, the reason for using your skill reallocations is so that they set at the best possible skills for you to operate them. Number one, that's the only reason why you use a skill reset. Number two, they can solo Dead Space. And when I say they can solo, I mean they can solo Dead Space 1, 2, Dead Space 6, 7, 8 alone, and they will do it properly. There won't be much resistance against them. They could do Dead Space 9, but I'm not 100% sure. They could do Dead Space 10, I'm not 100% sure. That's because of damage and recovery from the bigger ships. I'm not sure whether they're going to be able to break through the shields. However, if you have more than one of them in a fleet, like a fleet of 10 of these, you're going to be able to buzz through everything in that fleet. All you've got to do is go into your settings and set yourself to default orbit. So if you're going to orbit anything, you make sure you keep your default. So whatever your maximum range is on your small cannons, you make sure that you stay at the range about 1 kilometer under, so that you can always negotiate basically where you're standing. And fleet commander always gives the next target, so you can actually have it as one person running the entire fleet if you set the right settings in your combat. So that's how it's going to go. You're going to wreck through the entire fleet. Nothing is going to catch you. The only thing you have to worry about is being webbed. If you ever do get webbed in a dead space, you're in big trouble and the ship will be destroyed. But considering the gain of a dead space, you most probably will be able to tank them solo and make it through them without much of a problem. So that's going to be about it on changing your classes from a high-end ship to a low-end ship. Now this video was altered because I did have a video plan for today. However, I skipped it forward a few days. There was the PvP PvE discussion. Was a pre-planned discussion. I was actually talking about the rebalancing because they had a talk about it in the content creators channel on the Eve official Discord. So they were talking about the fact that some ships you can't disrupt them with the disruptor, and the fact that they get away from your gate camps. Now, I was actually going to make a video covering that whole situation and explaining my point of view on it, but I'm not going to give it out just yet because I want to brush up a little bit more on the difficulty of PvP. Because a lot of players were saying it's almost impossible for them to fight players because players just run away by maximizing the optimizer skill. They use a engineering rig for warp core optimizing, and it's +2, plus they have an Aurora warp core stabilizer. So when you hit them with double disruptors, they just keep running through and you never ever catch them. So that was the whole thing that they said, and I'm going to go through and look at it. Now, another benefit to these small ships is they can lock onto targets a lot faster than your bigger ships. And when I say a lot faster, I mean a lot of you have noticed that the 6 or 7 second targeting lock on your ships. That's because the bigger ships have that little bit of scan resolution problem. It doesn't make much of a difference increasing it by 5 and 6%. They need to give you something like 20, 30, 40% reduction, and then it will make a difference in how you fight, because a 40% reduction will definitely allow you to lock faster. And they're only giving away 5% per level on any one of the vessels. So that's where you were losing a lot. And boosting it up in engineering means that you lose another engineering rig that will help you in actual combat for most of the fights. So you'll be able to lock onto a target, but you won't be able to sustain the fight because you've lost your velocity, so you're going to take more damage and lose more capacitor. And those are the certain things when it comes to the rigs. I do have a video plan for it as well. However, it's not yet flushed out. It was probably about 15% done. There's still a whole lot of work that I have to do on working out where each of the rigs will help you and where they won't. As you know, the most favored rig for me in the engineering slots are velocity and capacitor. Now, you could always swap them out and give yourself better inertia or better turning, or you could use something like a Higgs anchor with a velocity and an inertia dampener to give yourself super fast turning. That means your ship will be able to turn almost instantly, and it will have super velocity, because even with the Higgs anchor giving you that velocity boost of 55% and reducing your increasing your weight, it means that it has a smaller turn radius, and the inertia modifier means that it can turn faster in the turn radius that it has. So those are the certain aspects to it, and I will get into them in their own separate video. I have to double check certain fittings. That means I actually destroy fittings on my ship to change this here over to test each one of them. And I will be going through them as I get along. In the next few days, I will be getting another Cyclone, and from there I will go on to test a lot of these things out. And I will be testing it with my Cyclone because I feel very comfy in that big ship, and it's going to be rigged out for heavy combat in the next few days. So let's see how far I can get with it. And I am definitely going to take it out on a PvP adventure with a few of my friends when I have about 400 to 500 million ready to back me up for a second ship. So let's see what happens. Thank you all for watching and have a good day.